Hey everyone, today I'm going to go through a game between Adolf Anderssen and Jean Dufresne, played in the year 1852 and most notably known as the Evergreen game. And this game actually literally bewitched many German players at the time. It's called an evergreen in a laurel wreath of great German masters, and Chigorin also said it was probably one of the most brilliant games he's ever seen played in the history of chess. Now, Adolf Anderssen was one of the strongest players in the 1850s, and Jean Dufresne was actually a student of Anderssen, and he was no slouch either. But in this game, Anderssen was playing with the white pieces and Dufresne was playing with black. And Anderssen began with 1e4, Dufresne played e5, there was knight to f3, knight to c6, and Anderssen now played bishop c4, with Dufresne playing bishop to c5, and Anderssen now went in for the Evans Gambit. And this is where white now plays b4, sacrificing a pawn straight off the bat. If black retreats rather than accepts the gambit, then white gets a really good game after a4 here, and even if knight takes b4 next, then a5, bishop c5, and white can play c3 for instance. After knight c6, white can just simply castle. Already white's well ahead in development and prepares to move d4 next, sacking a pawn and gaining a really good initiative. And I believe it was Capablanca who said something along the lines of, if you need to refute a gambit, you have to accept it. And this is what Dufresne does. So he plays bishop takes b4 in the game, accepting the pawn's sacrifice. So Anderssen continued with the move c3, hitting the bishop on b4, so that retreats back to a5, and the point of the Evans Gambit is now to smash open the centre with d4. So basically white just wants to get their pieces into the attack quickly as they can, with moves like queen to b3 and bishop to a3 and castling kingside. Dufresne now took on d4, he played e takes d4. Obviously the c-pawn is now pinned against this bishop on a5, so white is now forced to castle. If black's greedy here and plays d takes c3, grabbing another pawn, white can play queen b3 and attack the f7 pawn. Black can of course defend with moves like queen to f6, but now white's pieces come piling in. White can play e5 in this position, hitting the queen, and if queen g6, still defending the f7 pawn, white just wins a pawn back with knight to c3, and if knight g to e7, white has bishop to a3. Let's say black castles, white can now play rook a to d1. So in this variation, white is actually 2 pawns down, but has an excellent advantage due to just great piece play and has really good attacking chances in this position. For instance, maybe a problem for black is how they're going to develop this bishop on c8, because even the d6 push is very hard to do with this pawn on e5. So white's got some nice options. But in the game, Dufresne did not capture on c3. Instead he played a bit of a weird move. He played d3, so trying to destroy white's structure. It's a good move in a way because it stops white recapturing on d4 and having 2 connected pawns together. So d3 makes a lot of sense. But Anderssen continued his attack. He played queen to b3 now, hitting out at this f7 pawn. And like the previous variation, Dufresne played queen to f6 to defend this pawn. And now Anderssen played e5, attacking the queen, which went to g6, still defending f7. And now Anderssen continued full steam ahead with his development, played rook to e1, getting a rook behind this powerful e-pawn. Now there are a few options that black can play. I'll go through one of them, which was bishop to b6. I was curious as to what would happen if black played this, but white gains a really good advantage with the move queen d1 now. And after a move like knight to h6, the point is that white will take this pawn off on d3 with the bishop, and the queen's really lacking some squares here. Queen h5 is one of the only moves, and after white plays a move like h3, let's say castles, white's got some major tricks here because they can play moves like bishop takes h7 with check. If the king takes this bishop, then there's a discovered attack with check, the knight jumping into g5, and white will capture the queen on h5 next move, displayed by these arrows. So let's say king h8, which is forced, then white can just play bishop to e4 and actually has a really nice game. And in this position, white's not even a pawn down anymore, just has equal material and a great attack coming. So bishop to b6 is severely lacking for black. For this reason, Dufresne played knight g to e7, developing his knights, preparing to castle kingside, and Anderssen played the typical Evans Gambit move now, bishop to a3, getting on this long diagonal. It's a very powerful bishop in this opening, and rains down havoc on black's position. If black castles straight away here though, white gains a good initiative with this move, knight b to d2. Again, the point is, if let's say bishop to b6, white can just play queen to b1, and we'll capture on d3 again with the bishop, and we're in a pawn back. And again, these bishops are just raining havoc. If the bishop goes to d3, both will rain havoc on black's position here. But after bishop to a3, Dufresne played a very weird move. He tried to dislodge this queen and bishop battery by playing the move b5. So opening up lines for the rook to come to b8 for black, basically sacking a pawn back. But I don't think this is so good. Now Anderssen just captured this pawn. Queen takes b5 was played. Rook b8 to attack the queen, and Anderssen retreated his queen back to a4. If black castles now straight away, there could be some tricks here. With let's say bishop takes e7, because then the knight takes, the queen is free to take this bishop off. So after queen a4, Dufresne actually made his bishop a little more safe and played bishop to b6, moving it away from the queen. And Anderssen now played knight b to d2, developing his last piece and connecting the two rooks on the back rank. And I think it's fair to say that Dufresne was maybe scared of castling here, because it looks as though white would have a great position. So instead he developed his bishop to b7 first, and actually Anderssen just went full in with knight to e4. So it blockades this queen from protection of this d3 pawn, and now the bishop is attacking it. Now I think it was Lasker who said maybe black should have played d2 here, and this was maybe black's last chance to save this game. The point being, after knight takes d2, this gives black enough time to castle kingside and get the king to relative safety without this knight on this terrible e4 square. As we'll see later in the video, we'll see how devastating this knight can be. But back in the game, instead of playing d2, Dufresne now played queen to f5. And this was actually a bit of a question mark move. It doesn't really achieve much, because this leaves Anderssen free to play bishop takes d3. And the point is now there's a discovered attack against the queen on f5. Basically this move allows white to play knight to d6 check or knight to f6 check and pick up the queen on f5 and move later. For this reason, Dufresne moved his queen to h5. And now I want you to maybe pause the video and see why this was considered one of the most beautiful games in the history of chess. This was certainly one of the most beautiful combinations. Maybe just pause the video and think, what would you play in this position? I'll give you a few seconds. So, if you spotted this move, I'm going to say it, you're an absolutely brilliant chess player, a chess genius in fact. If you spotted Anderssen's next move, knight to f6 check. So, this forks the queen and the king at the same time, and it basically forces Dufresne now to take this off. So g takes f6 is forced, and now Anderssen played e takes f6. So the rook's opened up on the e-file, with the f-pawn attacking the knight on e7, and also don't forget this bishop is still here raking down havoc as well, attacking this knight. So this was a temporary piece sacrificed by Anderssen. Dufresne continued with the move rook to g8, and now it was actually Lasker who said white missed a really nice win here. Anderssen played a really good move next, but he actually could have played a little bit better. A really nice move would have been bishop to e4 here, for instance. The point being is bishop takes c6 is threatened, and then the knight on e7 has no more protection, and white will be free to take it. So that would have been a very nice move for white to play. But Anderssen played a decent move anyway. He played rook a to d1. And after Dufresne played this move, queen takes f3, picking up another piece, attacking g2, threatening mate on g2. Now we see Anderssen's genius. And again, maybe pause the video here. I'll give you a few seconds. What would you play in this position? So if you found this next move, again, you're an absolute chess legend, because this is an amazing move. Anderssen played rook takes e7 with check. And the point being is, if the king sidesteps this with king to d8, for instance, white can play rook takes d7 with check. And if black decides to take this rook off with king takes d7, white has bishop to f5, double check, forcing the king to go backwards to e8, and white can finish the job with bishop d7 check, king d8, and then bishop takes c6, with checkmate to follow. So in this variation, after rook takes d7, king c8 is forced, and then you can just come rook to d8 with check. The point is that the rook can't take this off because then pawn takes queen on f3 will be played, so if the king takes, there's just bishop to e2, discovered check, and white will pick up the queen on f3. So an incredible combination. So after rook takes e7, Dufresne, instead of moving the king to d8, played knight takes e7. And again, Anderssen comes up with a genius follow-up. He plays queen takes d7, check, queen sacrifice. If the king moves to f8, then queen takes, the knight will be played with checkmate. So king takes, queen is forced, and now comes the devastating blow, bishop to f5, double check. King e8 was played by Dufresne, and Anderssen finished the job. Bishop d7, check. The king went to f8, and Anderssen played bishop takes e7, which is checkmate because the king's now trapped and the pawn stops the king from running. So Anderssen just sacrificed all his pieces to make the black king, and that was a wonderful game. And it's not surprising it was dubbed one of the most brilliant games ever played. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed my analysis of this game. If you did, please support the channel by dropping a like, commenting or subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video.